It started with a call that no one could have expected, a voice cutting through the static of the late-night radio show, trembling, hurried, almost desperate, like someone running through the dark with shadows pressing close behind them. "You don't understand," the stranger said, her words jagged, fragmented, as if she were repeating them just to convince herself she was awake. Outside, the town was quiet, the streetlights flickering faintly against the cold black sky, ordinary and unremarkable. But inside, her panic made the night feel like it had been rewritten entirely. The host, normally calm and composed after countless late-night calls, froze, sensing the electric charge in her voice, the way it bent around something unspeakable. She whispered about lights that moved like living things, shapes in the sky that defied physics, and people disappearing without a trace. Every sentence she uttered drew the listener deeper into a world that felt impossible yet terrifyingly real, a place where everyday reality was suddenly fragile, cracked by unseen hands. Her voice wavered again, the kind of tremor that makes a normal night feel like a trap waiting to close, and she spoke of warnings, threats, secrets they did not want to surface. The ordinary hum of the town, the distant dog barking, the faint rustle of leaves, stood in sharp contrast to the chaos of her revelation, emphasizing how extraordinary her claims were. Listeners leaned in closer, unblinking, as she described phenomena that made the rational mind reel. Lights hovering silently over fields, time unaccountably lost, memories that didn't line up with reality. And then she paused, longer than seemed human, swallowed by fear, her next words hanging suspended, trembling on the edge of something catastrophic. "They're watching," she finally managed, before the line went dead, leaving only the faint buzz of silence and static in its place. The host sat frozen, unsure if the stranger was gone, or if the danger had just begun. Outside, the town remained unchanged, deceptively peaceful, yet in that quiet, every listener felt the creeping awareness that their ordinary lives were suddenly exposed to something vast, incomprehensible, and utterly haunting. In that moment, a single question clawed at the edges of every mind listening. What would you do if a stranger called you with a secret that could change everything? The town at night seemed ordinary, peaceful, almost sleepy, with empty streets reflecting the soft glow of the streetlights, and windows aglow with the warm, familiar hues of late-night routines. A distant dog barked, a car rolled lazily along a quiet avenue, and the wind whispered through the trees, rustling leaves in a pattern that felt predictable, comfortable. Yet, as the camera, or imagination, lingered on these everyday details, small anomalies began to creep in, subtle but insistent. A streetlight flickered once, twice, then pulsed in a rhythm that made the familiar appear strange. Shadows stretched in impossible directions, bending around corners, clinging to walls as if unwilling to obey the laws of geometry. From a nearby hill, a low hum vibrated through the air, faint but steady, like the heartbeat of something unseen, and it seemed to resonate with the emptiness of the night, pressing on the edges of perception. A window in the distance reflected a movement that wasn't quite human, too fast, too deliberate, and in that instant, ordinary life fractured, revealing a world that existed alongside the one everyone thought they knew. Inside the radio studio, the host replayed the stranger's call in his mind, each word echoing against the silence of the town outside. Every mundane detail, the flicker of a neon sign, the distant train whistle, suddenly felt pregnant with meaning, as if each sound and shadow was a clue in a puzzle no one had agreed to solve. Listeners leaned in, tension coiling in the pit of their stomachs, as the unease grew with every ordinary scene that refused to stay normal. And then, mid-sentence, the stranger's voice faltered, caught, and vanished completely, leaving nothing but dead air and the subtle static hum of the radio. The abrupt silence was more deafening than any shout, and it hung over the night like a warning. The host stared at the empty line, his pulse quickening, and the audience felt it too, an almost tangible awareness that something unseen was watching, waiting, and unwilling to reveal itself. Questions multiplied unanswered, pulling every mind into the suspenseful unknown, desperate for what came next, yet bracing for the fear they might discover. It began with small, almost dismissible incidents. A man walking home from the corner store would glance at his watch and realize 15 minutes had vanished without explanation. A woman tending her garden would look up and find the sun lower in the sky, though it felt as if only moments had passed. The stories multiplied, each more unsettling than the last. Ordinary people recounting moments that defied their understanding of time. Lights in the sky were reported, soft, pulsing, hovering far above the rooftops, moving in patterns that seemed intentional, yet beyond comprehension. And with these lights came an odd sensation, an intangible tug at memory, a lingering déjà vu that gnawed at the edges of consciousness. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones at local diners, comparing notes over steaming coffee, their voices carrying both curiosity and fear. Did that really happen, or am I imagining it? One would ask, eyes darting toward the window as if the shadows themselves might answer. A schoolteacher described losing nearly an hour in her classroom, students frozen mid-motion, yet no one else seemed aware of the passage of time. Ordinary routines twisted into the surreal. Clocks appeared to lag, radios emitted faint static bursts, and familiar streets suddenly seemed unfamiliar, as if reality itself were bending around invisible hands. Each account added layers to a growing pattern, a tapestry of inexplicable phenomena that no one could fully explain. And yet, the relatability of these experiences, the fact that they happened to everyday people, made them all the more chilling. Viewers, listeners, and readers alike were pulled in, recognizing the hint of their own unremembered moments, their own fleeting lapses in time. A faint hum often accompanied these events, a vibration through air and bone that left witnesses unsettled long after the lights disappeared. Some reported objects slightly out of place, a misplaced cup, a chair turned differently than it should have been. There were fleeting images at the edge of vision, shadows that seemed too deliberate, too coordinated to be random. Each narrative teased the mind, a blend of disbelief and fascination, challenging the boundaries of ordinary understanding. And with every story, the central question grew louder, pressing against the edges of awareness. Have you ever felt like time slipped away for no reason, leaving only fragments, impressions, and a nagging sense that something or someone was watching? The mysterious missing moments left the town on edge, as if reality itself had been punctured and no one could predict when, or where, the next anomaly would strike. As the night stretched on, the town became a gallery of inexplicable signs, a place where the ordinary collided violently with the unexplainable. Photographs left anonymously on doorsteps captured fleeting, unidentifiable shapes hovering in the darkness, shadows that did not align with any known source of light. Blurred videos appeared on social media, showing faint glimmers darting across backyards, lights that pulsed in deliberate sequences, and silhouettes that seemed almost human but moved with an alien fluidity. Sidewalk chalk drawings of strange symbols emerged overnight on quiet streets, geometric patterns impossible to replicate by chance, their lines precise and purposeful. Everyday objects, the mailbox at the end of a driveway, a parked car, the lamppost outside a diner, were juxtaposed with these surreal anomalies, grounding the extraordinary in a familiar frame, making it impossible for the mind to dismiss them as hallucinations. Local residents spoke in hushed, urgent tones about doors unlocked despite being secured, keys misplaced in ways that defied memory, and clocks that spun backward for brief, terrifying moments. Each piece of evidence, no matter how subtle, layered the town with a pervasive tension that made even mundane acts, pouring coffee, walking home, checking the mail, feel loaded with potential discovery. The narrator's voice guides the audience through this unsettling landscape, highlighting contrasts between calm domesticity and bizarre intrusion, pulling viewers into a state of alert anticipation. And then, the inexplicable became personal. Security footage from a small convenience store showed a blurred figure standing in the shadows near the entrance, its form indistinct, yet unmistakably aware of the camera. For a heartbeat, the figure turned and stared directly at the lens, eyes, or what resembled eyes, locking with the viewer in a silent, accusatory gaze. The effect was chilling, leaving an indelible impression of presence, intelligence, and intent. The town, the evidence, and the witnesses seemed to conspire together to create a narrative too coherent to ignore, yet too mysterious to comprehend. The audience is left teetering on the edge of certainty and fear, questioning not only what they saw but whether anyone or anything was truly in control. The night sky had always been a canvas of stars for the local astronomer, a familiar rhythm of constellations and predictable movements that brought comfort and order. But lately, something had shifted, subtle at first, a glimmer here, a flash there, that refused to fit any known celestial pattern. On clear nights, she began noticing recurring formations, clusters of lights that hovered, pulsed, and moved with deliberate precision, as if choreographed by an unseen hand. At first, she questioned herself, the telescope, even the atmospheric conditions, but the anomalies persisted, night after night, too consistent to be dismissed. The calm observational tone of her usual routine, recording star charts, noting planetary positions, turned tense, almost reverent, as the lights exhibited patterns that defied probability. Geometric sequences, repeated arcs, and sudden disappearances, only to reappear moments later in perfect alignment. Even more unnerving were the frequencies she detected, low vibrations barely perceptible to the human ear, but registered clearly on sensitive equipment, as if the sky itself were sending a message, coded and deliberate. Each measurement, each observation, layered the ordinary night with an extraordinary presence, making the familiar stars feel like silent witnesses to something intelligent, something that had been there all along but hidden between the cracks of human perception. The astronomer's hands shook as she adjusted her telescope, heart racing, knowing she was watching a sequence that had no natural explanation. And yet she felt compelled, drawn into a dialogue with the unknown, as if the lights were aware of her attention, aware of being observed in return. Her notes grew frantic, meticulous sketches mapping trajectories that seemed purposeful, calculating, almost communicative. Viewers, listeners, or readers are invited into her perspective, sensing the escalation from curiosity to realization, the tension rising with each methodical observation. And the question lingers, pressing on the audience like cold air against the skin. If someone or something is observing us, what would they want? Each light formation, each hum and pulse, feels intentional, leaving an indelible sense of being watched, catalogued, and studied, turning a calm, quiet night into an arena of suspense and unspoken dread, where every shadow might conceal insight or threat, and every blink risks missing a revelation that could alter everything. It started as a routine evening for Mark, a local resident who had always considered himself a skeptic, grounded firmly in logic and the predictable rhythms of daily life. Walking home from the diner under a blanket of stars, he noticed a strange glow hovering just beyond the tree line, too uniform, too deliberate to be a reflection or passing vehicle. The light followed him, moving in sudden bursts, keeping pace with his steps, and Mark felt a chill crawl up his spine, a primal awareness that he was being observed by something he could neither see clearly nor comprehend. His voice trembled as he recounted the experience to friends and authorities later, describing the craft as luminous, almost liquid in its motion, pulsating with an intelligence that seemed to anticipate his every movement. The street around him, once mundane and familiar, became an alien landscape. Shadows stretching unnaturally, the wind still except for the faint hum that seemed to emanate from the light itself. Cinematic tension built with each word he spoke. Ordinary streets, lampposts, and parked cars contrasted against the surreal intrusion, making the audience question what was real and what might be imagined. Mark's emotions shifted rapidly, from disbelief to fear, to a reluctant awe as the light hovered above his backyard, tracing patterns impossible to replicate by human hands. Neighbors reported seeing the glow as well, confirming his account, and yet the inexplicable nature of the phenomenon made it impossible to classify or contain. And then, as quickly as it had appeared, the light vanished, leaving Mark shaken but determined to record every detail, to preserve evidence of the encounter. But the narrative did not end there. The next morning, Mark was gone. Friends and family found nothing but a scorched mark where he had slept the night before, a blackened imprint that shimmered faintly in the morning light, a haunting reminder that whatever had followed him was no longer content with observation alone. The abrupt disappearance, paired with the bizarre evidence, leaves viewers suspended between disbelief and dread, compelling them to question not only the nature of the craft but the limits of human understanding. Every detail of his testimony lingers, echoing in the mind like the low hum of something unseen, a puzzle incomplete, a warning unheeded, and an urgent invitation for the audience to imagine. What would you do if you were the next witness, the next target, the next to vanish into a night that refused to be ordinary? The threads of countless strange encounters began to weave into a pattern, subtle yet undeniable, like constellations forming a map of the inexplicable. Investigative footage surfaced, grainy clips of lights darting in impossible formations, fleeting glimpses of figures moving against the night sky, and eerie recordings of unexplained sounds that resonated deep in the chest, vibrating with a sense of intention. Interviews with witnesses layered on top of this visual evidence revealed an unsettling consistency. Ordinary people experiencing events that defied rational explanation, each account echoing details from decades-old reports. Historical UFO cases resurfaced, dusty files showing government memos, classified reports, and testimonies of pilots and scientists who had seen, and in some cases chased, the same enigmatic lights and shapes. Each revelation added pressure, a sense that the world beneath the calm veneer of ordinary life was anything but ordinary. The emotional stakes climbed steadily. Viewers felt the weight of these stories, the quiet horror of realization that what they had dismissed as myth or paranoia might have been present all along. Patterns emerged across decades and continents, each anomaly a piece of a puzzle that hinted at intelligence, coordination, and deliberate concealment. Ordinary streets, fields, and skies became stages for events hidden in plain sight. Events the audience was invited to connect, almost as co-investigators uncovering a truth long buried. Tension built as the narrator drew parallels between historical accounts and present-day sightings, framing a narrative that suggested someone or something had both observed and orchestrated events, meticulously manipulating evidence to remain just beyond reach. Small, almost imperceptible details, shadows in the background of old photographs, subtle inconsistencies in official statements, recurring patterns in light movements, began to appear as deliberate markers, as if left intentionally to tease those willing to look. The audience is compelled to lean closer, to cross-reference, to feel that electric thrill of discovery while simultaneously shivering at the implications. Questions multiplied. Who is hiding the truth, and why? What do these lights want, and who, if anyone, is truly in control? With every connection, every observation, the sense of participation deepened, making viewers feel both empowered and vulnerable. By the end of this section, the past and present merge into a single tense continuum of secrecy, intelligence, and awe-inspiring mystery, leaving the audience on the precipice of revelation, eager yet apprehensive for what the night, and the next encounter, might reveal. The night thickened like a curtain, heavy and impenetrable, yet pierced by a strange, pulsating light that hovered silently over the fields. Objects moved without cause. A gate swung slowly though no wind stirred. Shadows stretched and twisted in impossible directions, and a low hum vibrated through the air, resonating in the bones of anyone nearby. Witnesses described an overwhelming sensation of being observed, not by human eyes, but by something far older, far more intelligent, its presence almost sentient, as if it could measure the fear and awe it inspired. Ordinary items became uncanny. A cup on a porch trembled, a bicycle shifted slightly out of place, a dog froze mid-step, staring into the void with unnatural intensity. The tension escalated with each detail, a crescendo of fear and wonder that made the familiar world unrecognizable, and yet impossible to look away from. Lights swirled in patterns that seemed deliberate, forming sequences too precise to be random, creating the illusion of communication, or perhaps a test of perception. The people who had once doubted now whispered in terror and fascination, clutching each other, drawn toward the unknown yet desperate to retreat. Every heartbeat echoed with anticipation, every blink risking a missed revelation. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, as if reality itself had paused to observe the unfolding spectacle. Some reached out, tentatively, fingers trembling toward the hovering lights, while others froze, paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of the unseen intelligence that seemed to study them in return. Questions pressed relentlessly. Were these lights alive, or were they instruments of some far-reaching plan? Did the shadows conceal a presence, or were they merely reflections of fear? The night became a stage for an encounter that defied logic, blending terror, awe, and curiosity into a single, inescapable experience. And yet, for all the evidence of intelligence, for all the seemingly purposeful movements, the mystery remained unsolved, unresolved, hovering just beyond understanding. Viewers are drawn into the scene, feeling the urge to step closer and uncover the truth themselves, while simultaneously recoiling at the enormity of what might be waiting. The emotional climax ripples outward, leaving each witness and each audience member suspended between the desire to act and the need to survive, balancing on the edge of revelation and dread. The lingering question pierces the mind. Would you step closer if you saw this yourself, or run into the safety of ignorance, forever haunted by what you glimpsed? The town slowly exhaled, as if it had been holding its breath for weeks, nights returning to a semblance of normality, streets quiet, and lights flickering only occasionally as if tired from the recent disturbances. Windows glowed with the familiar warmth of domestic life, neighbors exchanged cautious greetings, and children's laughter echoed faintly down empty lanes, grounding the ordinary in a fragile cocoon of safety. Yet the calm was deceptive. Hums lingered in the night air, low and persistent, almost imperceptible but enough to make heads tilt in unease. Shadows lingered in the periphery, stretching unnaturally around familiar corners, and the occasional flicker of lights reminded residents that the extraordinary had never fully departed. Conversations carried a muted edge, voices lowered as if speaking too loudly might summon the unseen back into their midst. People replayed their experiences, reliving the nights of strange lights, missing time, and inexplicable phenomena, each recollection a subtle tug at their rationality. Even the most skeptical found themselves glancing skyward, feeling the weight of observation, the sense that someone or something was still watching, cataloging, or waiting. Objects that had shifted inexplicably remained slightly out of place, a lingering reminder that not everything could be accounted for, and ordinary routines carried an undercurrent of caution, as if the mundane had been forever tainted by the unknown. The emotional rhythm, the slow return of calm punctuated by subtle, unnerving reminders, kept tension simmering, leaving viewers suspended between relief and anticipation. Every flicker, every unexplained hum, every shifting shadow served as a soft drumbeat of unease, echoing the events that had unfolded and suggesting that the town's reprieve was temporary, fragile, and possibly illusory. In this quiet aftermath, the audience is drawn into reflection, left to question what truly occurred, what was observed, and what remains just beyond perception, lingering in the silence like a whisper too faint to ignore, yet impossible to forget. Even as the town settled into a fragile routine, the questions lingered, heavy and insistent, echoing in the minds of everyone who had witnessed, or even heard about, the inexplicable events. Did the witnesses truly vanish, leaving only traces like scorched marks and whispered rumors, or had they simply been taken somewhere beyond comprehension, their memories fragmented and inaccessible? Were the lights intelligent, sentient observers of human life, or merely natural phenomena manipulated by forces unseen, orchestrating a dance that mocked understanding? The evidence was tantalizing yet incomplete. Security footage, witness testimonies, blurred photographs, strange hums in the night, all pieces of a puzzle that refused to be solved. Ordinary life, once predictable, now felt like a fragile veneer stretched thin over a deeper, hidden reality, and the calm of streets and households only sharpened the awareness that something remained beyond grasp. The narrator's voice invites the audience into this uncertainty, encouraging reflection, debate, and discussion, as if the act of pondering could bridge the gap between the known and the unknowable. Shadows on familiar walls, flickering lights, and subtle vibrations in the air serve as reminders that the extraordinary never truly leaves, only recedes temporarily, waiting for the next witness, the next observation, the next story to surface. Viewers are left suspended between disbelief and fascination, their minds actively connecting dots, imagining possibilities, and questioning the limits of perception. Every unanswered question deepens intrigue. Who or what is truly observing? Why now and why here? And perhaps most hauntingly, will humanity ever understand the full scope of what watches from the skies? The story closes not with a resolution, but with a quiet, unsettling invitation, leaving the audience in reflective suspense, minds racing with theories, fears, and awe. Tonight, as you close your eyes, look up. Do you think they're still watching?